Hello, my name is Felix and I'm from Ski in Norway, and I love Evolution Talk. It's packed full of fascinating information about things related to evolution and the history of evolution, all presented in this easy to understand form, and I cannot but joyfully listen to every single episode, and I can't wait for future ones, so thank you.
There is grandeur in this view of life.
Welcome to Evolution Talk with Rick Coast, an introduction to the oldest story ever told.
In a recent episode, I interviewed the author Jonathan Tweet. Now, during the interview, he said this.
Clades, those are the categories, evolutionary categories that animals or organisms fall into.
It occurred to me that after 70 episodes, I haven't once explained what a clade is, or even mentioned the word. So today I'm going to rectify that. Today I am going to talk about cladistics. Now, what is cladistics? Now, to put it simply, it's a method of classifying organisms based on the traits that can be traced to their most recent common ancestor, but the same traits were not present in more distant ancestors. Now, cladistics hasn't been around long. You could trace it back to work done on birds by zoologist Peter Chalmers Mitchell in the early 20th century, but it really picked up steam in the 1960s. Now, this method of classifying organisms gave birth to the cladogram. Now, you've probably seen a cladogram before without knowing exactly what it was called. It's a lot like a family tree. You'll see lines branching off from lines. Now, what it isn't, though, is an evolutionary tree. Evolutionary trees are those large trees of life that show how all animals are related to one another and how they evolved. You could almost take one of the branches and call it a clade, but that's not quite right. To be more appropriate, a cladogram will branch off from the main branch to show those animals that share similar form and structures. It's not about animals which have evolved from one another. And there's not one way to create a cladogram. You can focus on different things, but the end result will be a branch that groups animals with similar features together in a logical order. Now, you can create cladograms of vertebrates and branch off from there to show those with similar features like, say, claws or marsupial pouches, each branch being a separate feature, the main branch being that they are all vertebrates. I'll include a simple cladogram as an example in the show notes. Now, to help explain this a little more, I'm going to turn to an unlikely place. As I'm doing so, remember that cladograms focus on shared biological traits that trace back to a most recent common ancestor. My example has nothing to do with biology. Now, we'll come back to biology after, but since I can't write this out on a whiteboard, I'll do it audibly. And this is, after all, on-demand audio, right? My auditory cladogram is going to focus on something the ears will appreciate. And it's going to start with Mark Twain.
This new creature with the long hair is a good deal in the way. It is always hanging around and following me about. I don't like this. I'm not used to company. I wish it would stay with the other animals. I get no chance to name anything myself. The new creature names everything that comes along before I can get in a protest.
So, that was a monologue from Extracts from Adam's Diary by Mark Twain. Now, as well as being a writer of books like Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, Mark Twain was a humorist. Now, he loved to poke fun at people and especially the established values of his time. Religion was one topic that he had a lot of fun with. Now, what you might not know is that he went on speaking tours where he would entertain audiences with monologues and prepared talks. From what I've read, they were also humorous and sometimes a little bit irreverent. You can find the text to some of his speeches online, and you could almost say that he was one of the very first stand-up comedians. It's not a stretch. He stood in front of an audience with the sole purpose of entertaining them and hopefully to make them laugh. So our auditory cladogram will start with Mark Twain, our first humorist who performed in front of an audience to make people laugh. As we walk along that branch, the branch of the humorist who performs to make people laugh will happen upon another branch that takes off to the left. Now this branch is labeled Humorists Who Perform to Make People Laugh on the Silver Screen. So let's walk along this branch for a little bit. Up ahead there are a few more branches to explore. Now here's one for silent solo acts. There's Charlie Chaplin and Fatty Arbuckle. And here's a branch for solo acts with sound.
I was in love with a beautiful blonde once there. She drove me to drink. That's the one thing I'm indebted to her for.
That's W.C. Fields, and behind him, if you look really carefully, you can see Mae West.
When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
Now let's go a little bit further.
$20 in one pants pocket and $10 in the other pants pocket. What would you have?
Somebody else's pants up.
Yeah, you see, you want...
Here we go. Now this is probably my favorite branch. Comedy duos. I absolutely loved Abbott and Costello. And there's Laurel and Hardy.
Well, here's another nice mess you've gotten me into. What are we going to do? I'm scared to death. There's only one thing to do. One of us will have to stay
Now, of
awake
course,
all
there's
night
a
to keep
branch
them
for
from
small
cutting
group
my-
ensembles.
Hey, what are you guys doing? Talking behind my back?
There's the Three Stooges, and over there is the Marx Brothers. And further on down, there's a branch for large group ensembles. Now, who can forget Monty Python or...
Alice, there are 9 different countries where March comes in like a frog and goes out like a golden retriever. That's not the weird part. No, the weird part...
Saturday Night Live. Now, if we had taken a detour and walked along some of the branches, we might happen upon other clades. Now, to be in a clade, they must all share something in common. So now, let's go back to biology. So yeah, I cheated a bit there. Well, actually cheated a lot. Clades are all about common biological features, not comedic delivery methods. But you could, if you really wanted to stretch the analogy, say that your clade and the one you're creating is focused on animals that migrate or group together in 2s, 3s, or small or even large groups, like our comedy acts. Now, cladistics is all about derived characteristics shared with their most recent common ancestor. In our comedy act case, it was Mark Twain. He was the most recent common ancestor. Now, if we build a true cladogram, say one on vertebrates, we could walk along the vertebrate branch and pass segments for animals that have hair, animals that eat other animals, animals that walk on 2 legs, and so on. So with cladistics, you have original states and you have changed states. Now, I've used the term derived a couple of times in this episode for simplicity. Now, to be honest, biologists or cladisticians, I did make that word up, I promise. That's not a real word. They tend to stay away from words like primitive or derived. Now, saying a characteristic is primitive or present in distant ancestors has a somewhat derogatory implication, as if the organism is less evolved or has less desirable traits. So, instead, you'll hear the term plesiomorphic to describe original, or in other words, those primitive traits, and apomorphic for changed or derived traits. Now, snakes are a good example. Snakes are legless. The plesiomorphic trait or state was that snakes had legs. One of their ancestors had legs. The apomorphic state is that it no longer has legs. Instead, it slithers around on its belly. Now, you and I, our long hair is on our heads. Now, you could say that our plesiomorphic state was to have hair all over our bodies. Our apomorphic state is to have most of it on our heads and very little of it on our bodies. What I want you to take away from all of this is that cladistics, or cladograms, show us how living things are related as far as their features go, as well as what we share and how we are different. They are an endless source of information, much like a family tree is. Now, today, cladistics dive even deeper by using genetic sequencing. Doing so gives even greater insight when it comes to analyzing and categorizing these relationships and shared traits. The beauty of cladograms is that they allow you to see with your own two eyes, a feature, mind you, that you share with quite a few animals. Your eyes allow you to see the beauty of the world around us, how it is connected, and how it is changed. And that's today's show. I love producing the show, and I hope to continue doing so for months, maybe years, so you can help by supporting the show. One important way is to tell someone about it. You can also point your browser or smart device to evolutiontalk.com/support. Now, thank you ahead of time for doing so. And if you want to learn more about the music on today's episode, you can find all of this and more at the show's official site, evolutiontalk.com. And as always, thank you for listening and for supporting the show. And until next time, please take care of yourself.
Suppose you walk into a baseball field. What teams are playing?
I don't know.
Then what are you doing in that baseball field?
I don't know. You got me in here, now get me out.
Look, what is the first thing you buy in a baseball field?
A hot dog?
The hot dog.
Without mustard?
Mustard goes with a hot dog.
Not with mine.
Mustard was made for the hot dog.
Now, but look, I don't like mustard.
Mustard and the hot dog go together.
Let them go together. I don't want to spoil any romance.
Do you know they spend millions of dollars every year to put up factories just to manufacture mustard? Do you know those factories employ thousands and thousands of men just to manufacture mustard? Do you know those men take care of thousands of families and homes, all on account of mustard? And you, just because you don't like mustard, what do you want them to do? Close those factories down and put all those people out of work?
You mean to sit there and tell me just because I don't eat mustard, I'm going to close down the mustard factory?
No, wait a minute. No.
Are you trying to tell me that those thousands of people are making one little jar of mustard like this just for me?
No, wait a minute. You don't understand.
Well, if they are, you can tell them not to make any more because I'm not going to eat it.
All right, so you don't like it.
I like Worcestershire sheer shorts.
You like what?
Worcestershire sheer shorts.
Worcestershire sheer shorts.
Evolution Talk is a Rick Coast production.